Hello, this is Angela with Parker's Permaculture. All right, I am not one to shy away from topics that tick people off. One of the things that I have been engaging with some of my fellow entrepreneurs about is knowing your target audience and speaking only to them. Knowing that the folks you speak to are the ones that you hope have your shared values, and making sure that your content doesn't violate your own ethics and values just so that you can get more clicks and more subscribers. For me, I struggle a lot with wanting to be true to myself, true to my values, and not shy away from the things that I think are really important to permaculture and sustainability movements, but also understanding that not everybody is going to like the thing I have to say. So it's okay if you disagree with me. I have mentioned many times in the past, I do not expect homogeneity of opinion in the comment section. I also know that you can enjoy some of my videos and you can find some of them disagreeable and not like them. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to stop saying the things or talking about the subjects that I think are really crucial for permaculture, for earth care, people care, and fair share. So today I want to talk a little bit about people care. The times that I bring up social permaculture are the times I know that I'm going to get the most pushback in the comments. And I think that's very telling. You get your hackles up, like maybe just listen until the end and maybe we can engage with each other in the comments. But if I say something that you don't necessarily like right at the beginning, there's a reason that I'm talking about it. If I think it's important enough to bring up, knowing that perhaps some of my viewers aren't going to like it and knowing that it might make somebody unsubscribe, think about why that is. That if we agree on topics of permaculture and many other things, why is it that this is something that I feel is important enough to talk about? So with all of that being said, oh, my chair's really squeaky, but that's the way it goes. So as you know, I have 4 children, and in the past I have had some butting of heads with other folks in permaculture, particularly other women in permaculture, particularly child-free women in permaculture, over the whole idea of having children and who kids are and what their role and place is in society and in a permaculture future. Now, I'm not going to get into the eugenics roots of the overpopulation myth. I will say that is a lengthy subject for another video, and I would love to talk about it because it is something that I have lots of feelings about. But I will say, for the sake of this video, and I will drop a link in the description, maybe a couple, the overpopulation myth is deeply rooted in classism and racism and eugenics, and it actually does not hold up when you look at the data. So when folks tell me you have no business having 4 kids, when folks tell me that in permaculture everybody should be child-free, humans should die out as a race, I'm going to disagree with that really strongly. I'm going to say that you have every right to be child-free. Nobody should be forced to be a parent. So nobody should be pressuring you to take on the role of parenting. Nobody should be pressuring you to reproduce if that's not something that aligns with your life vision, the way you want to lead your life, or what you feel your skill set and energy level are, right? That's not fair to you. It's not fair to any kids you should make if you are not equipped and ready to be a parent. There should be no judgment for you. A child-free life is just as valid as a life with children in it. The key point I want to make here is that in progressive groups lately, in permaculture groups, in sustainable living groups, in environmentalist groups in particular, groups I'm all active in, there is an awful lot of really childish rhetoric. And boy, it really, really ticks me off. So childism is a form of discrimination against somebody simply because they are not an adult. It is a form of ableism. And actually my friend Dana shared a really good tweet from Parenting Decolonized, which has got a great Twitter and a great Facebook if you are into either of those things. I'm going to put it up here and I'm going to read it off my computer. So, hating, disliking children is a form of ableism. So many of the reasons adults dislike kids are things that they can't control because of their bodies and brains. They're new humans learning to navigate the world, and instead of understanding, they get disdain. What a great tweet. What a great tweet. When we don't like kids, when we make derogatory comments about kids, when we call them snot-nosed brats and monsters and crotch goblins and whatever other things we want to call them, that is a form of ableism. And I see so much in permaculture and in environmental movements and in movements of certain progressives where I understand it's a reaction to the pressure that is put on folks to have children. Instead of saying, actually, I don't like the pressure that's put on me and I don't have to reproduce, it's turned into denigrating kids and othering them and dehumanizing them. Now, I've made videos in the past about how important it is that we look to the energy and vitality and creativity of our youth when we're looking at sustainability movements in general, but also someone's value in a permaculture world has nothing to do with how much they can contribute, how convenient they are to your life. So when you think about the reasons that I don't like kids, think about why that is and what that is rooted in, because it's often rooted in ableism. It's often saying, I think of you as less of a person because you are not yet mature. Your brain works differently, your body works differently than mine. And think if you would use those same kinds of descriptors you use for children and the same kind of disdain that you have for children when talking about a group of people with disabilities, when talking about someone of a different race, when talking about the elderly. And see if you wouldn't feel a little gross applying those same kinds of thoughts to those other marginalized groups. There was a post in a progressives, being progressive is good group that really rankled me this week when folks were talking about how great it is to be child-free. And again, that's totally great. But once you start calling children monsters, once you start calling them names, once you start reducing them to sort of a subhuman status, it's really easy to other them. It's really easy to say, we don't actually need to meet the needs of kids or people that are caring for kids. We don't actually have to include them in our design. What we are is folks who want to enjoy our happy, free life where we can focus on me and my wants and my needs. And I don't want to have to think about what it's like for someone whose existence is maybe different and maybe harder. It's easier for me to other them. When we look at children, they are the most disenfranchised, the least powerful group in society across all demographics. If you want to look at intersectionality, kids from every religion, race, culture are the most oppressed and voiceless and powerless group that we have. And we as permaculturists who want to embrace people care, we can't forget that kids are people too, right? That kids are people that have often very few legal rights, no autonomy to speak of, and are powerless. And yet they are the future. And yet when we look at creating a more sustainable world, when we want to create a resilient future for all people, who are those people? Those folks are today's children. Those folks are tomorrow's children. And so when we get in a permaculture mindset of nobody else should reproduce, I have every right to be on this planet, but you don't have a right to be on this planet because you're a child and you happen to be born later than me, we need to really check ourselves about why we're making those assertions in the first place and think, what does a real permaculture future look like in which we have earth care, people care, and we have fair share for all? Children shouldn't get less of a voice, less resources, less caring, less consideration in our permaculture design, and treated as less than human simply because they're young. I'm sure I will get flack for that. I'm frustrated that I see those kinds of dehumanizing comments and treatment of children, and also things like calling mothers breeders, which is disgusting. Those kinds of comments come from progressives. Those kinds of comments come from particularly men who self-label themselves as progressive. I vote Democrat. I'm socially progressive, but kids shouldn't exist. I love being child-free, and you women who have babies, you're just breeders. Yikes, let's not reduce mothers to livestock, okay? That's not a good look at all. That you need to think about why that's real gross. So I have chosen to separate myself and end friendships over that kind of discourse and behavior. We have got to do better when it comes to our permaculture design of being inclusive toward children. And who cares for children? Statistically across the world, it's mostly mothers. And how those groups, the mother-baby dyad, the caregiver and the young child, how those groups tend to be the most at risk in our population. They tend to be the most at risk for poverty, lack of health care. They have less of a voice. They tend to be much more at risk for abuse and oppression than other groups. So when we design a permaculture world, when we're looking at what we want to create, when we create a better future, let's remember that kids are people. Let's remember that our permaculture future includes people care. Our permaculture present includes people care, no matter what your age, or your ability. Your value as a human being doesn't come from how much you can work, how hard you can play, how much you can travel, how much you can be independent and do things on your own. Your value as a person does not come from those things. And so it's not just the young, able-bodied adults who matter in permaculture, even though they're glorified in our society. It's the children, it's the elderly, it's the disabled, it's the marginalized who matter, and who, if we want to have a resilient society, we have to design with those groups of people in mind. Not simply saying, well, everybody needs to stop reproducing and humans should go extinct. And the kids who are here, like, they're just crotch goblins and I don't really have to worry about them. I'm grossed out by them because they're immature. Their bodies and brains are still developing. Let's do better. Let's do better. Thank you for letting me rant. I had just become increasingly frustrated with the number of environmentalist and permaculture people expressing that mindset. And to me, it doesn't obviously fall within my values as a parent of children and as an aunt and as somebody who loves the kids in my neighborhood and someone who cares about children and sees them as equally valid human beings and someone who wants to live out the permaculture ethics. So thanks for coming along on this little ranty ride with me. I will be back very soon from outdoors in my permaculture garden. I'm in here today in my bedroom because it's super hot outside. I'm hoping fall is on the way soon, but we've got a few more hot days ahead. I'll be back. Thank you for watching.